All right, all right. Welcome to the Cherry Heat Check Lobo Basketball Podcast. This is Ricky Thompson. Excited to catch up with everyone on all the Lobo news that's been going on with new coaches, new players, and a lot on the horizon for the Lobos, even though the offseason has just begun. As we know, Lobos have hired head coach Eric Olen from UC San Diego, coming over after spending 21 years there as both an assistant and head coach. He will be coming to UNM, joined by three um, gentlemen that were on his staff at UCSD, which came out today, news April 4th, Friday. Joining Coach Eric Olen at New Mexico will be assistant coach Tom Tankelwicks and assistant coach Sam Stapleton, and also assistant coach Mikey Howe, who were all under Coach Olen there at UCSD, where his top assistant will be staying back to be the head coach there. Forget his name at the moment, but Coach Eric Olen did thank everyone at UCSD, and including that coach who's going to be taking over there. So all exciting news to finally have some coaches under the head coach. We'll see if NIL manager also gets hired, with Coach Olen mentioning that in his opening press conference as well. But before I get into all of that, what I really wanted to hit on first here is one of our former Lobos who just wrapped his season up about 15 days ago, Mr. Nelly Jr. Joseph. He just played in the Reese's All-Star game for the Western team, where they lost 100-91, but Nelly was an unstoppable force. I did watch most of the minutes that he played. He went 7 of 8 from the field, including this monster dunk. If you're watching on YouTube, you could see a photo of it here, which we saw many of these dunks throughout the season. And you see Max Shulga of VCU watching as Nelly flies by. But each time Nelly got the ball in the post, he made a quick, decisive move. That hook shot was there, also had a nice pump fake and up and under, and got his picture taken after the game with fellow Mountain West member, former Nevada Wolfpack player, Mr. Kobe Sanders. And both of these guys were trying to show out in front of the NBA scouts and, of course, fans that were there in San Antonio awaiting the Final Four. So big hats off to Nelly for representing New Mexico. Over the past 3 seasons, we've had a Lobo play in this All-Star game, a senior, that being Uncle Mo Udeze 2 years ago, Jalen House last year, and now Nelly Jr. Joseph. So congratulations to him, a really good showing. Will be interesting to see, where Nelly's career really goes from here. I would expect him probably to get looks possibly by the NBA Summer League teams, possibly make a G League roster. But if that's, not in the cards for him, within the next year, he can make money playing basketball a lot of other places. And I would expect him to play professionally, whether it's in the United States or elsewhere. Some guys that won't be playing professionally yet that we're all aware of, Donovan Dent will be going to UCLA. Philip Borovichinen will be following Coach Pitino to Xavier. We've heard Braden Applehans, the three-point marksman for the Lobos, will now head to the Midwest to Drake to be closer to home. I believe, 3 or 4 hour drive from Kansas City, where he's from. Nick Davidson, the forward out of Nevada, will be playing at Clemson next year. DJ Thomas of UNLV will be going to LSU. Obi Ogbum of Wyoming will go to Baylor. So all of the top players, not just Donovan Dent, probably outside of a Mason Fosselev at Utah State, are moving out of the conference. So, I don't think we should feel like UNM is the only school that was targeted in these efforts. The only school I've really been able to see retain guys so far would be San Diego State, which looks like they'll keep Magoon Guath, who was a stellar defensive player of the year and a freshman this year for the Aztecs. It looks like he will come back if he does not go to the NBA. And he will be joined by Miles Bird, who will return to San Diego State as well if the Aztecs, or if he does not play pro. However, the Aztecs are losing Nick Boyd, their point guard, who's moving on to Wisconsin, I believe I saw rumors of. And sorry, I'm losing my voice here with allergies if I'm going in and out. I recorded something actually last night, but after listening to it again, it was pretty terrible, and I didn't want anyone to have to endure those sounds. But I guess just getting back to the man of the hour, Coach Eric Olen, had his press conference, as we know, on Monday in the Rudy Davalos Center over there on the other side by the pit. And, you know, when we talked about this last week on the pod, I kind of threw out some names who were candidates. And, you know, as it came to be a week ago, Friday night, James Borrego, who seemed to be the favorite for the job, the Albuquerque native with plenty of NBA experience, plenty to look forward to in his coaching career, decided to back out of the job on Friday night. And we learned on Saturday that it was narrowed down to Andy Kennedy of UAB, a coach who's now lost almost all of his players he had last year to the portal. And of course, Coach Eric Olen, who eventually was announced getting the position and had that conference on Monday. He was reported on a 5-year deal starting out at $1.2 million a year, and was really introduced nicely by President Stokes, Fernando Lovo, and a lot of fans there. And, you know, I think Coach Olen probably sounded a little nervous to some people, possibly to me too, but I think the things he got across and the message really came across well. Once he got off of his comments that he had written down, he flowed a little better. Not that his written stuff was bad by any means, but I think the way he answered the media questions after with statistics from Evan Maya and things of that nature were really impressive. But, you know, why I thought this was a good hire, just being able to do less with more is something that he's proven to do coming up through the coaching ranks, sticking with this program and elevating it through D2 to Division I, going through the waiting period. And after that waiting period, seeing this team take off the last, 2 seasons, he's winning Big West Coach of the Year. And the team is just, really hit new levels, going 51-17 over those past 2 years. Of course, we know 30-5 this last year with the NCAA tournament berth, beating Utah State, in Logan, very impressive win. Only losing to San Diego State early in the season, I think the first or second game of the year by 5 points, and then their final game hanging with a tough Michigan team from the Big Ten, the whole game, and only losing by 3 in the first round. Can't really say more about, what he's shown so far with the players he's been able to recruit. The questions now, really start to lie about what's he going to do with these new resources, the new level of player that he's going to be able to get, after spending 12, years as a head coach at this lower rank. But I think the system that he's going to bring in is going to be much different than we saw with that of Patino. He relies heavily on ball screens from all players, a lot of ball movement, passing, something we didn't really see a lot of with the Lobos this year, a lot of the ball sticking and dribble heavy offense in my eyes. This should open up shooters and have more guys involved. And I think that's probably what this team will call for, since the roster will be a lot of new guys and probably I'm not thinking a star player on the level of an All-American mentioned Donovan Den, or maybe, even someone on the level of a Jalen House or Mashburn. That'll yet to be seen with what they do in the portal here and maybe who they retain from the current squad that still hasn't transferred. But the defense, he mentioned he played was mixed between a man-to-man and a matchup zone defense. I haven't, seen much of it myself, but watching Utah State's matchup zone earlier in the season, we saw the confusion that it caused to teams around the Mountain West and in the non-con before Mountain West teams came around a second time and kind of figured Utah State out the last 10 games. But it'd be interesting to see, the philosophy that he brings is high pressure defense that generates a lot of steals. Trying to find the numbers here, but it generates a lot of steals, doesn't give up a lot of points. I believe they were top 10 in points given up per game defensively in the country. But they average 79.3 points a game, and that's 16th nationally in scoring percentage from beyond the arc. So this 5-out system is high paced, looking for high value shots. And sometimes that'll mean taking 3-pointers early in the shot clock, which I'm not usually a big fan of. But according to Coach Olen, if those are open looks, he considers that a good shot, even if it's early in the clock, or maybe not traditionally what we would consider a good shot. So we will see how that offense plays out with who he's able to get to Albuquerque over the next few days. The portal, I believe, is going to close before we know it on April 22nd. So maybe 18 or 17 days from now, that will already be closed. But I wouldn't, be surprised if we see a player come in over the summer or, a few months before this season with the way that things work out these days. Some of the questions, I guess, are being answered, as time ticks on, as far as who will be on the staff. I mentioned the 3 coaches that will be following over from UCSD. One player that had been recruited to UCSD under that staff will be following them as well to New Mexico, and that will be Jake Hall out of Carlsbad, California. He averaged 28 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, shot over 40% from 3. I believe he's 6'3" or 6'4". Looks like a very capable player that can score in multiple ways, but wouldn't really say he's looks like someone that would contribute right away as a freshman. I could be wrong. I don't see him out there guarding Miles Bird anytime soon in conference play, or Mason Falsalev, but he could get spot minutes as a sharpshooter. You never know, depending on how this roster fills out. But the first real recruit signed under this new staff is Jake Hall. Currently the only player still under scholarship from last year is Ibrahim Osako, who was the transfer from Georgia Tech. So maybe he will stick around. That would be fantastic. I think retaining, obviously, as many of the remaining Lobos, the true Washingtons, the Jovan Milicevic, Cade Dotson, Quentin Webb, Daniel Thomas, anyone I think that they can retain, that is important at this time of NIL, especially for mid-major teams where we see the entire roster walking out the door, even at a UAB under a Coach Kennedy, who's been very successful. If you don't have the NIL funds in place and the support from the school, then it looks like you're not going to be able to keep a team. Fortunately for New Mexico, they have 505 Sports Ventures, run by Kurt Roth, Mackenzie Bishop also sitting on the board, others that have had this vision for years and have planned for times like this where we will need the money to go shopping for new players. And it's just something we as fans have to get used to. Unfortunately, being asked to support the team and also have those very same players taken away just 1 year later after we're asked to support them. It's a very difficult spot as a fan. And getting back a little bit to that press conference really quick, when President Stokes was making the introduction and her words about how committed the university is to sports and how important the athletic program is to the community and to the university. Well, we haven't really seen that commitment anytime lately. The budget of New Mexico's athletic department sits at the bottom of the Mountain West, currently, I think 10th out of 11th last year. Football stadium has not been one that anyone cares to go to due to many reasons, being whether it's the team, the structure itself, the parking, the concessions, you name it. People have not enjoyed a football game there, even in a long time. Even last season, upsetting Washington State, there was no one there by, if you're comparing it to other football programs. So until that investment is really made, they can say, how committed they are, but I don't think they're really matching up with the work that the NIL work of 505 Sports Ventures and the community has put into this. And I know going to the state legislature is something that AD Fernando Lovo and others in the athletic department have done. But it sounds like the first shot they had a couple months ago, they totally went in with the wrong plan. I don't know if it was Lovo or who was presenting it, but asking for NIL money from the state is not something you can do. And it sounds like that's what they initially did. And they went back and re-asked for the money, which, came back to New Mexico and New Mexico State as nutrition and mental health funding, which is needed. I'm guessing, and can be repurposed for other things, but that's just a small fraction of money when you see what other schools are doing, like in Nevada, who's building a brand new basketball locker room facility, I believe have newer football facilities. And you see what some of these other schools are doing that have moved on now to the Pac-12 and in the years to come. And that's the reason New Mexico's left behind. It's hard to hear someone stand up there and say that they're committed to endorsing New Mexico athletics on the highest level when we have not seen that. So that was really the low point of the press conference for me, because saying those things don't really align with the actions in my eyes at this point in time. But fortunately for Coach Olen, the basketball facilities are fantastic. You have one of the best arenas, one of the best fan bases, the top attendance-wise fan base in the Mountain West again this year, with over 13,000 a game, over 17 games, beating out San Diego State, Boise State, Utah State, Nevada, by thousands. So everything is really set up for a coach to come in and have success. Now it's about if the kind of coach Eric Olen is can translate. I would really think about bringing over that NIL manager position so that he can focus on other things with all the new expectations he'll be, trying to reach here, not just this season, but in the next, 3 to 4 years. But I think he's very humble, obviously not looking just for the next best thing. But even that being said, it would not be surprising if he has success that he will get calls. As we know, people do get the calls when they do well at New Mexico and move to even higher level programs. And him being one of, in my eyes, the hottest names coming up in coaching, was, I believe, sought after by UNLV before they went elsewhere, and I believe would have been considered by Utah State if they did not re-sign Coach Calhoun. I think Lobos are very fortunate to have Coach Olen, and he's very fortunate to be walking into the situation he's in, with the Lobos coming off, 2 fantastic seasons and the ride, that we've been on as fans. So, with all that goodness that Coach Pitino brought, the level of expectation has never been higher, and that's going to be hard to keep at that level. Maybe in this next season, but I think going into the new Mountain West in 2026, Lobo basketball is, positioned perfectly to be at the top, with Nevada, UNLV, and the Grand Canyon, who will, be playing basketball in the Mountain West as well. And I think Grand Canyon, with who they've added already in the transfer portal this year, transfer from Gonzaga. I believe they got um, Henley, a transfer from UNLV. They look like, someone who's committed to basketball and will be a gain for the Mountain West, as a potential tournament team each year. So even if it is a one bid league at that point in time, I think there will be a lot of good basketball played, and the Lobos basketball program is in a very good position right now looking forward, with the staff they now have and the money they have in place, for NIL in this conference, sitting, as one of the top teams, if you look at it money wise. So what could possibly go wrong to make, these perfect dreams that I'm talking about go wrong? One thing I threw out there today on Twitter that, people quickly tried to correct me on is, saying that the strength of the non-con schedule might not be as strong now that Coach Pitino is leaving. The connections, not only with his father, but others around college basketball that he grew up having over, his coaching career and his father's career have probably allowed him to have those connections, to schedule these games, a UCLA, a VCU game that, we'll get to ride into next year and play at VCU in that home and home series. But I was just wondering, after this next season with these games that Pitino had already set up, I was reminded of the Lobos midseason tournament that will be in Kansas City this coming year, I think around Thanksgiving time, and the teams there will include a Nebraska, a Kansas State, and a Mississippi State. So the Lobos will play 2 out of those 3 teams in Kansas City around Thanksgiving. Those will all be good, K-State, Mississippi State, Nebraska. All of those teams will present good wins, quad one opportunities. Mr. David Valdez reminded me, so thanks to everyone who helped me remember that tournament does exist, and they will be in a mid-season or multi-team event during the mid-season next year in Kansas City. So they will have those games, of course, a New Mexico State game. But what other non-con games can they get, similar to a UCLA? I don't expect, a game as high as a level as St. John's, but who else can they get on their schedule here for the upcoming seasons, not only in 2025, but 2026 when the Mountain West is weakened? It will be ever important to get those early games against, other schools out of conference, with quad one opportunities, because the second half of the season will not present those any longer for the Lobos once the San Diego States, the Boise States, Utah States, and Colorado States head elsewhere out of the Mountain West. So schedule-wise, that might be a challenge for Coach Olen. Getting teams to come to New Mexico is always a challenge because they don't want to take that risk. The out-of-conference games that he had last year at UCSD were 2 Mountain West schools, or 2 of them were Mountain West schools, that being Utah State and San Diego State, which he will already have this year. So he can't exactly ask Dutcher and Calhoun again to help him out on that front. But others have also asked about what kind of player recruiting-wise Olen will be bringing in. I did mention Carlsbad high school player Jake Hall will be coming over, but a player that the Lobos were recruiting and had signed under Coach Pitino out of California, Isaac Williamson, a 6-foot guard, highlight reel scorer and fantastic defender, who we were all looking forward to seeing in the Cherry. Of course, he decommitted after Pitino left. The funny thing is, he was also recruited under Coach Olen at UCSD some time ago, so maybe that could still work out if Isaac Williamson still wants to be a Lobo. There's a coach that also wanted him at one time, and we as fans were already ready to see him. I think Mr. Williamson would be a fantastic addition to this roster. If he could hang around 2 or 3 years, he would really have a chance to be a special player in the cherry and silver. I guess with that salary being 1.2 million, I'm wondering the other budgeted money that they had possibly had ready to offer Patino up to 2 million, if that means they have that additional budget in the coaching salary to get that NIL manager to help expedite this transfer process that we're all awaiting anxiously to see someone get signed here. But it'll just be really, really fortunate, I think, for Coach Olen if he can keep one of these bigger name players that were on the team last year, someone that contributed. I don't know if True Washington is even, someone that's in the mix. I would think he could get a big piece of the NIL money if he were to stay. Jovan Milicevic, freshman forward, who is probably the best three-point shooter on the team this year. Would love to see him stay. I think he would fit fantastically into what Coach Olen is trying to, or is going to adapt with the team in New Mexico. I think if he, could keep one or two of those guys, Cade Dodson, along with Sacco and, possibly anyone that was on the team, retaining them and building off that camaraderie is key. I believe going forward, and not just this season, but even the seasons going forward, keeping a core of players. We saw how key that was to New Mexico's run this last season, keeping Amzil, Washington, along with, of course, Nelly and Dent. We're just so critical for UNM to have the success with the transfers and freshmen they brought in. That being said, I think I will just keep on high alert here for other transfer news. I think we will still see probably another coach or two added to this New Mexico staff. Really looking forward to seeing maybe a coach he adds outside of the UCSD world, and who that could be and where they would come from, and really see what type of basketball this team is gonna play after the roster kind of takes shape here, because with only a short amount of time left here in the portal, you have to start to wonder what kind of quality players they're getting. Coach Olen was asked about recruiting Division II players. He said, he is open to that, and they're, have talent to show as well. And I believe we could see that with some of the players that Sundance Wicks brought into Wyoming this past season, and they really, I think, played a lot better basketball than a lot of people expected, with mostly new roster and a lot of D2 and I believe even JUCO players on that team, and they gave a lot of teams in the Mountain West a tough time. So I think there's talent at all levels that Coach Olen will be able to find and bring in, and when he does, it seems like he will be the guy to get them play at a high level and a cohesive unit together, rather than relying on one or two guys. Though there will be multiple ways to score, and I think that's what it'll take over the next few years until they really get some big dogs on the team again. One final Lobo note outside of just this coaching news: former Lobo Corey Alford will take an associate coaching job at Oral Roberts under head coach there, Corey Barnett. Of course, Corey Alford is a son of Steve Alford, former coach at UNM. Corey was the coach at Huntington University last year. So following in his father's coaching footsteps, that is pretty awesome. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't hear about his brother, Bryce Alford, if he's not already into coaching, getting into it when he is done with his playing days, because those guys also seem to know the game of basketball at a very high level. And when your dad lives and breathes it, I don't think you have any other option than to learn it as well. So I just want to thank everyone that's reached out to me and, kept me going to do this show, kept me updated with news, and listens to it. If you're enjoying what you hear, just tell somebody about it and let them know. We will be keeping the Lobo news flowing throughout the off season and talking about everything that's going on. Do plan on having a guest on next time. We will see who that will be. Liven it up past this monotone voice here for all the Cherry Heat checkers. But appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you next time around on the Cherry Heat check.